The Green Bay Packers finished the 2024 season with an 11-6 record and made the playoffs for the fifth time in the last 6 years.
I mean, it's something that you don't take for granted. That you don't take for granted for sure.
Unfortunately, the Packers ran into a loaded Philadelphia Eagles team in the wild card round and lost to the team that would eventually win the Super Bowl with a score of 22-10.
Here's Love, though, last gasp attempt, going deep down the field into double coverage. It's intercepted.
But despite going 11-6 in the regular season, it was a very frustrating year at times for the Packers because it seemed like they could never get over the hump. And not only that, but despite being 6-2 through 8 games, or 9-3 through 12 games, or 11-4 through 15 games, this team never led the division at any point during the 2024 season. And despite the fact this team was a wild card round exit that, again, never led the NFC North at any point last year, they were top 10 in several major categories. They were top 10 in points scored, points allowed, turnover margin, both offensive and defensive DVOA, and an EPA per play, yet fell short. And the Packers were in a very difficult situation last year because they were in a division that had two 14-win teams for the first time in NFL history. And inevitably, Green Bay did not get a lot of love nationally. And heading into 2025, I have a few concerns with the Green Bay Packers. And when you ask the simple question of how much closer did this team get to winning a Super Bowl heading into 2025, based on where they were at the end of 2024, well, I don't know how much closer they really got. And in a lot of ways, the Packers are in a difficult situation entering the year. And in today's video, we're going to break down everything regarding the 2025 Packers. And before we start, if you could like the video, I would really appreciate it. And without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing who the Packers brought in this offseason and who they lost prior to the NFL draft. And much to the surprise of pretty much everyone, the Packers went out and signed former 49ers guard Aaron Banks to a 4-year $77 million deal. And obviously what matters with an NFL contracts is guaranteed money, and only 27 of the 77 is guaranteed, but this signing surprised a lot of people when it was made. And what surprised me about this contract was the amount they signed him for, mainly because Aaron Banks is not that great of a player to begin with. He's not bad per se, but he's not $19.25 million per year good either, especially when the Packers let center Josh Myers go in free agency, who signed a 1-year, $2 million contract with the Jets. And if I had to choose which player I'd rather have along the interior offensive line, well, I'd rather have Josh Myers at $2 million than Aaron Banks at over $19 million. But that wasn't the only player the Packers spent pretty big money on. They went out and signed corner Nate Hobbs to a 4-year, $48 million deal. Now, with Nate Hobbs, again, I thought they overpaid a little bit for who he is as a player, and for reference, he's missed at least 6 games in 2 of the last 3 years, and the best ability is availability, and I didn't think that was a particularly great contract either. Now, if there is a positive spin to this, it's that Green Bay generally doesn't guarantee free agents big money, so they are protected if either player does not work out for them. By far the biggest player they lost this offseason technically happened after the NFL draft, as he was released in June, then signed with the Ravens a little over a week later, and that's former All-Pro Jair Alexander. When Jair is on the field, he's a problem, but unfortunately that's been a battle over the past 2 years, as Jair has played in just 14 of the last 34 possible regular season games for Green Bay. On top of losing Alexander, they also lost former first-rounder Eric Stokes, former defensive tackle Daryl Slayton, linebacker Eric Wilson, and running back A.J. Dillon. Now, I'm not opposed to spending big money in free agency, especially with the way Green Bay does it, as they guarantee very little after the first year of the deal, meaning there is usually very little risk when Green Bay splurges on a player in free agency, like a Josh Jacobs or like a Xavier McKinney, but I can't get behind giving Aaron Banks an average of over $19 million per year, and even Nate Hobbs $12 million per year, when neither player has ever shown the consistency to be the type of player they are now getting paid to be. Neither Aaron Banks nor Nate Hobbs is a bad player by any means, but would you want to pay somebody like Christian Kirk an average of $32 million per year when Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb are getting paid an average annual value of $35 and $34 million? And that's kind of my point, specifically with the Aaron Banks signing. For what it's worth, I absolutely love the Josh Jacobs and McKinney signings last year because of what it meant for Green Bay, but I did not like the idea of overpaying a guard to ever so slightly upgrade the position. Bringing in Aaron Banks and Nate Hobbs were the two big free agent signings for this team, as everyone else they signed were to deals worth $1.5 million or less and are journeyman players at this point in their careers, guys like McCole Hardman and Isaiah Simmons. And because of who he is, releasing Jair Alexander in June was the biggest loss for this team this offseason. Now, with the Packers defense, this is overall a really solid unit. You don't accidentally finish 7th in defensive DVOA, as well as 6th in points allowed per game, all while forcing 31 turnovers in the process, which also ranked 4th in the NFL. But the one big thing I go back to with the Packers defense from last year is they allowed 24 or more points in 7 out of 17 games, and they went 1-6 in those 7 games, with a lone win coming over the Jags, who of course finished with a top 5 pick and fired their head coach at season's end. So my thing here with the Packers and what concerns me for them entering 2025 is they allowed 24 or more points to teams like the Lions, Vikings, and Eagles, and technically the Bears in Week 18, though Packers fans, I do acknowledge they only allowed 224 yards of opposing offense within the Week 18 game, and 7 points came from a fake punt reverse play, meaning it was not all on the defense. But in 5 of their 6 losses, they were to the Super Bowl champions, a 15-win team in the division, and a 14-win team in the division. And this is what concerns me with the Packers heading into 2025. This is also a team that doesn't have a legit number 1 pass rusher, and I don't mean to discredit Rashawn Gary, but it's more of a, do you think he's in the Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa, Micah Parsons tier? And unfortunately we know he's not. I'm also kind of out on Lucas Van Ness at this point, and this was a developmental pass rusher the Packers took at 13 overall that hasn't worked out to the level they were hoping for, to say the least. Not to say the door is completely closed on him as a player, I just don't think he's going to develop to be a consistently good player at this point in his career. Kenny Clark is also turning 30 in October, and I believe there was a bit of a drop-off from 2023 to 2024, and he's certainly not the player he once was. Devontae Wyatt is hit or miss depending on the week and has certainly had a few moments as an NFL player, but he's now 27 years old, and I would be surprised if he becomes a consistent 50-plus pressure a year guy from here on out. Not to say it's impossible, I would just be pretty surprised. I don't have a lot of confidence in this team routinely getting home to the quarterback, and I also have a lot of concern with the corner play as we enter 2025, especially when you're in a division with Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and DJ Moore to name a few, though I would personally argue this division is the deepest in the NFL in terms of good receivers, and for a team that's already not the best at corner, and to not have a legit tier 1 pass rusher before the season even begins, well, that's putting them behind the 8 ball in some way before the season starts. Now, one thing I do want to clarify, there are several great players on this defense, obviously. The Packers didn't have the success they did last year by accident, and Xavier McKinney was an absolute home run of a free agent signing, and I also think Edge Cooper is a budding superstar at the linebacker position. But when you are heading into the season with your top corners being Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs, Kamal Hadden, and Bo Melton, well, I have some questions to say the least. Evan Williams was also a really good player last year, as was Carrington Valentine. But my point with the 2025 Packers is the good players can only do so much. Edge Cooper can't do everything. Xavier McKinney probably will not repeat the success he had last year. Not to say he's a bad player, I just don't think he's going to have back-to-back 8 interception seasons. Quay Walker is a liability who doesn't read the game well, and hasn't in his first few years in the NFL, and probably won't in year 4 either. And my biggest concern with the 2025 Packers defense, for as good as they will play at times, is it going to be enough when you have to go against the elite teams in the NFC, and when you have to play teams who are going to be a lot stronger than you up front? And to me, the answer is no. And the Packers can say what they want, but they're not entering the year hoping to win 10 games and to hopefully pull out a wild card win. They want to go the distance, and for a team that struggles to regularly get after the quarterback with questionable outside corner play, well, I have my concerns with the 2025 Packers defense. From an overall defensive ranking standpoint, I think they'll finish in the 10 to 14 area. For the 2025 Packers rookie impact, the biggest thing that we need to acknowledge and hammer home, especially pertaining to the 2025 season preview and the 25 season specifically, is reasonable expectations. This team had 4 selections in the top 150 picks of the 2025 draft, so it is not reasonable to expect the 198th pick in the draft in Georgia defensive lineman Warren Brinson to come in, wreak havoc, play next to Rashawn Gary and have 12 sacks and 57 pressures and win the defensive rookie of the year, right? So when we start with the 2025 Packers class, we have to start with receiver Matthew Golden. He was the first receiver that the Packers selected in the first round in over 20 years, and Matthew Golden was a receiving prospect I liked, and a player that at times I thought was a little too hyped in the pre-draft process whenever people were talking about him being the first receiver taken off the board and that Teteroa McMillan was going to fall to the mid to late 20s. Whenever that happened, it was kind of Teteroa McMillan falling and Matthew Golden rising, and that was not a process or a part of the draft process that I was the biggest fan of. Now, having said that, Matthew Golden is obviously not a bad player. I just didn't like the pre-draft hype for a player who I didn't think was a top 5 or 10 player in this class, and the NFL certainly didn't either, by the way. But one thing that I do want to be clear is, just because I was a little lower on Golden, I had him at player 33 in my big board, doesn't mean I think he's going to be a bad player. Not even close. And in fact, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he leads the rookies in receiving yards this year because he's in a pretty good situation. And one thing about Matthew Golden is he's a really good route runner, and I think there was some Stephon Diggs in his game. Now, one thing that I do want to discuss with Matthew Golden is I don't think he is a true 4.29 game speed 40 kind of guy, where there's guys that run these very fast 40s and they don't play at that level, and then you have guys that run like 4.5s that are a lot faster on the field, and Matthew Golden is a player that I think has 4.4 or 4.45 game speed, but that's not a bad thing, especially with how he gets open. And there's going to be plays this year where the Packers are in 3rd and 11 late in the 4th quarter and Jordan Love rolls out to the right, Matthew Golden uncovers himself 34 yards downfield, and he makes his big play, and everybody goes wild, and the Packers keep the drive alive, and a couple of plays later, they go down and score and win a big game. There's parts of Jordan Love's game that do not get discussed as much as they should by the national media, and it's due in some part to recency bias because he was injured for a lot of the 24 season, or at least not healthy because of the brutal injury he sustained in week 1. But Jordan Love does a hell of a job of extending the play, similar to his predecessor in Aaron Rodgers, at least when he was in his prime. And there's going to be moments this year where Packers fans' jaws, I don't want to say drop, but there's definitely going to be moments where people are going to say, man, how did this kid fall to pick 23? Matthew Golden will be a very productive receiver, especially in the Packers offense. And when you look at the other receivers in the offense, there's absolutely no reason that Golden can't come in from day one and be a 1,000-yard guy, especially with a good quarterback throwing him the football. Now, for the rest of the 2025 Packers draft class, I'll be honest, I don't think there's going to be all that much rookie impact, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be a bad draft class over time. One pick that I like the player, I kind of just question what the vision for him was second round pick Anthony Belton. I think Anthony Belton is a mauling offensive lineman and a player that I would absolutely love to kick inside to guard because I don't think he has the foot speed to be able to play at the NFL level, at least in terms of the speed edge rushers that would very easily work their way around him, because there were times with Belton at NC State where his feet were in cement, so it would make a lot of sense for a player that big and that physical to naturally kick inside to right guard, or left guard for that matter. But whenever you look at the Packers roster for that matter, are they going to have a redshirt year for an already 24-year-old rookie who will be, of course, 25 next year, and then release Aaron Banks 1 year into his deal that they just paid $77 million for? Or are they going to eventually replace Sean Ryan with a second-round developmental offensive lineman? And because the reality is you're not going to replace Rasheed Walker with Anthony Belton when you already have Jordan Morgan, a 2024 first-round pick on the roster, and Zach Tom is Zach Tom and one of the best offensive linemen in the league. So I kind of question what the vision with Anthony Belton is, and full transparency, I do record the rookie impact before I will interview Marcus Whitman, so this is a question that I'll definitely ask him here in a little bit within the video, but that's one player where I don't dislike the pick, I just kind of question what the long-term vision with Anthony Belton is, because the reality is you're not going to draft a 6th utility offensive lineman specifically for 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2 or 4th and 1 situations along the goal line within the top 60 picks. So I'll be eager to see how they plan to use Anthony Belton over the first couple of years of his career, but naturally, unless there is an injury in front of him, which we of course hope does not happen, I wouldn't expect much from Anthony Belton in 2025. Now, with Savion Williams, the receiver from TCU, this is a prospect I liked a lot, but I question how much of an impact he's going to have in 2025. This is not Savion Williams slander as much as it's, hey, Matthew Golden's a good player, Jaden Reed is a good player, Tucker Kraft is also a really good tight end. How many targets is Savion Williams really going to have in 2025? And that's where that kind of comes from. I don't think that Savion Williams is a bust waiting to happen, especially considering he was a 3rd-round prospect. But my point is is he really going to come in and have 85 targets as a rookie? And I would say probably not. Now, he is a very fun player, and when he's on the field, he's definitely going to be somebody you want to pay attention to because he is a boom or bust player in a lot of ways. He had drop issues during his time at TCU, but he surprisingly, for the drop issues that he had, was also really good at making contested catches. He's also a really good, I don't want to say gadget player, that's probably not the right word, but he's a hyper-specific role player where he can come in and win those tough slant routes where once he kind of stabs that foot into the breaking part of the slant, and once he crosses right in front of the DB, he's so big that the DB can't come back in front of him. What's he going to do? Jump over the back of Savion Williams or try and, really lunge around him to stick a hand in? It doesn't exactly work like that. So Savion Williams is going to be a very unique player, especially because the Packers, Christian Watson is kind of an anomaly, and we hope the best for Christian Watson in his recovery as he suffered a major knee injury in week 18. But Savion Williams is going to be a unique player, especially in the Packers receiving room in 2025 and 2026 for that matter too. I just question the role that he's going to have and how much Matt LaFleur is going to say, hey, we want to take the ball out of Josh Jacobs' hands, Matthew Golden's hands, Jaden Reed's hands, and Tucker Kraft's hands so that we can force feed a third-round rookie. And again, it's not Savion Williams slander as much as it is to talk about how good the rest of the offense and the rest of the playmakers within the offense are. Barron Sorrell was a fourth-round edge from Texas, and whenever you have a team that has pass rushers like Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness, especially LVN, who the Packers invested a first-round pick back into in 2023, I again question how many snaps Barron Sorrell is going to play. So whenever you have just 4 top 150 picks in the 25 draft, with one of them being a backup offensive lineman and a second being a backup pass rusher, there's naturally going to be limited impact for your 2025 draft class, and I don't think that this was a bad draft class. We gave the Packers a B draft grade during draft weekend, and it was the second highest draft grade in the division. The highest draft grade, of course, went to the 7-time reigning offseason champion Chicago Bears, but I question how much rookie impact they're going to have, and again, not that this is a bad draft class, it's just naturally going to be limited for 2025 specifically. And now, we get to our interview with fellow YouTuber, That Franchise Guy, Marcus Whitman. All right, for the 2025 Packers team preview, we welcome on Packers fan, fellow YouTuber, special guest, my friend, Marcus Whitman, That Franchise Guy. Marcus, welcome back to the channel. How we doing?
Doing great. It's always good to be back. Excited to talk about my Packers, who are definitely going to finish above your Vikings this year in the NFC North.
So, let's just go ahead and let's just lay our cards on the table here. Marcus, for everyone who doesn't know, like I said, Marcus and I, we're friends. We hung out down in Mobile. So there's going to be some good natured, ball busting within this. So I guess let's just go ahead and just rip the Band-Aid off. The Packers finished 11-6 last year. There's a lot of research that goes into the team previews. Obviously, you do your deep dives. One stat I forgot to look up. 11-6. Surely would they go win the division 4-2? What was the Packers division record last year?
Hey, we got one against the Bears.
Okay,
barely. Thanks to a blocked field goal.
All right, so now that that's out of the way, let's just go ahead and talk about Jordan Love, the player you expect him to be this year, and I'll give my input after, but I just want to hear how you feel about Jordan Love as a player entering 2025.
Yeah, I think it's like the biggest of, years for Jordan Love. Year 3 is going to be a big one. I think it's just like small sample size sport, right? And even with Jordan Love, what we have gotten from him, it's been polarizing. The first season was way down, then it was way up. He gets the big contract extension, and then last year, you have to be realistic about him battling through injuries. And it's not like he was that bad, but there was definitely some bad spread out throughout the season last year. So I look at a guy that has very underrated processing and decision-making. I think so many people rip on him for the Jameis Winston YOLO plays, which are a part of his game. He is an aggressive quarterback. There's going to be a few clips throughout the year that might even hurt his team's ability to win an individual game or two throughout the season. But even in those games, he's typically just kind of washed those mistakes off and battled back and put his team right back in a position to win. So I think his general ability to play the position, to play on time, to process defenses, to throw with anticipation, to go through full field progression reads, he's very underrated in that sense. I would say he's top half in the league in terms of processing and decision-making, generally speaking. So I got to at least defend him in that area. I think the physical traits speak for itself. He's a very good athlete. He's got a very good arm. I don't think he's elite in either category necessarily. But those give him a very nice overall floor for his play on the season, even if, he might be a little bit more up and down than like a Kirk Cousins would be or something like that, who's maybe a little bit more steady over the middle. But I do think the accuracy's just got to get better, man. Like, he's never going to be more than the 14th best quarterback in the league if he's missing throws at the rate that he does. He throws off his back foot. I think even when he does throw with the right mechanics, he misses throws. He leaves run after catch opportunities on the bone. The meat on the bone is left. And he just sprays throws, which kill drives and can lead to interceptions. So, like, that's the biggest issue with him, in my opinion. And that's up to, mechanics and coaching for him to improve. But I look at him as a good tier 3 quarterback that I do still think has potential to be more of a championship caliber tier 2 type of quarterback, if you will.
So off of that, my one big thing with Jordan Love with the national, or with the narrative surrounding him right now, is I hate how people want to make it like it's definitive in ink that he can't get better than 11, 12, 13. That frustrates me, because it's never mentioned that, hey, he suffered a brutal injury last year in week 1 against the Eagles, where there was definitely time within the Packers fan base where they thought his season was over based, with that uncertain time before we knew what the injury was. I mean, it was nasty, right? So I hate and this is where I wanted to dive in after I wanted to let you answer first and then kind of give my take. But I hate how definitive people talk about a player that has not started for 2 full seasons. So that's where I do stand with Jordan Love. And I would agree that it doesn't really, for this specific, each player is unique, but for a 27-year-old player, there's still room to grow based on what we've seen so far. Now, speaking of the offense and with Jordan Love, how do you feel about the receiving room and first-round receiver Matthew Golden heading into the year?
I mean, I think the world of Matthew Golden. I was super high on him coming out. He ended up, I think, the 12th overall player on my big board. And I think getting that reliable number 1 wide receiver in this offense is going to just change the entire math for the offense. Warren Sharp put out a stat that the Packers were number 1 in the league last year in incompletions due to wide receiver error. So that includes drops mostly, but also like when they're able to determine if it was a miscommunication or, the receiver stopped on a route or whatever. So that was a big, part holding Jordan Love back last year as well. But to have a guy in Matthew Golden that I think is an excellent route runner, a high attention to detail player by all accounts, even for a rookie, and just the utmost reliable hands. So having a guy that when they get to their third down passing game, he's going to be the primary read. He's going to be getting those core targets to keep drives alive, to create explosive plays as well. But to have that be where they funnel the offense through, in my opinion, that's how it's going to play out as the season goes on. And then you have Jaden Reed, who's a really fun number 2 wide receiver, even though he's out there, going to the team like, I'm still the number 1, right? Like, I don't know what the hell that was all about. But Jaden Reed, who did have a bunch of drops and maybe wasn't as reliable or as consistent, but super explosive. He can be their gadget player. He's a very good vertical threat from the slot. Love how he plugs into that pecking order. And then you got a reliable Tucker Kraft underneath. You've got a plethora of other guys that they've asked to be more than they probably are in Romeo Doubs and Dontavion Wicks. Like, everything just settles in so nicely. And I definitely think this is the best, group of weapons that Jordan Love has had and that the Packers have had. I mean, man, if Matthew Golden is as good as I think he is out the gate, I think this group has a chance to be better than when this team had Devontae Adams back in like 2020, 2021. Because the ancillary weapons were Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Alan Lazard. So there's definitely a reason to be excited. And then the Christian Watson factor too is like kind of a cherry on top. They're not counting on him, but his ACL recovery is going better than expected. For him, it's more, I think the question is like, can he recapture the explosiveness coming off the ACL? And can he stay on the field? It does seem like he's going to be back out there around mid-season, which is really exciting because if you plug a true like high-end vertical threat into the mix there, that's kind of your if you're talking about, putting together the perfect group of complementary skill sets, you got your vertical threat, you got your number one, you got your gadget slot guy, you got a good, tight end. Like that's ideal. Like that could be a top 10 group easily if everything comes together. So there's definitely a reason for excitement, but certainly question marks as well.
So for every team preview that I do in the channel, we do a rookie impact, and we do want to break down the Packers' mainly the first 5 or 6 selections at the 25 class. That's where the bulk of the rookie impact is going to come from. Within the first 3 selections, the Packers also selected Savion Williams, wide receiver from TCU. Obviously, the Packers have several wide receiver 2/3s on the roster right now. No disrespect is intended there, but it's where do you see Savion Williams in 2025, and then ultimately the role for him moving forward beyond the 25 season?
I hope I'm wrong about Savion. I don't see someone that is ever going to be a part of a starting 3 as a receiver in the NFL. The hands are just so inconsistent. A guy that spent 6 years at TCU, never produced. You got to question with a guy with those traits. Like, this is a Madden creative player, like 6'4", freaky athletic traits. You got to question a guy with those traits. Does he have the right attention to details? Is he, putting in the right, I'm not questioning his character or anything, but is he able to really grasp the offense and put in the time to have the attention to details that are so important at the receiver position? That's what I question with him. Now, as a gadget player with Matt LaFleur, who's as creative of a play designer as anybody, yeah, absolutely. The Packers run a lot of jet sweeps and that kind of stuff. I think there's potential for him to line up as a running back in the backfield. Myself and many put a lot of Cordell Patterson comparisons on him. So I think we might get the occasional splash play from him that could impact games. Honestly, as a kick returner, that's where I'm most excited about him. The Keyshawn Nixon experience started very good, but has definitely tapered off. And he's going to be a full-time starter in the cornerback room. So I don't think they really want him returning a ton of kicks. He was the one that fumbled that opening kick return against the Eagles that just set that whole game off from the get-go. So with Mecole Hardman coming in and total brain fart here, who was Savion, I think as a returner in a year where they changed the rules so that touchbacks are penalized even more from the new rules from last year, that I think could be a big impact, setting up better field position, maybe taking a couple to the house.
So, I mean, I agree, by the way. I like the idea of Savion Williams. I think Savion to me right now is, I just don't think he's going to have a productive season because of everybody in front of him, but I like the idea of him. But the practicality is, for the future projection is, I mean, it's difficult to say with any sort of confidence who he's going to be. So I said within the rookie impact that I'd be surprised if he has more than 30 or 35 receptions this year, strictly because of just everyone that's in front of him on the depth chart. Now, within the 25 Packers draft class, and ultimately this goes back to the 24 Packers draft class as well as free agency this year, what do you think the vision with Anthony Belton is? And then with last year's first round selection, Jordan Morgan, with Rasheed Walker and Zach Tom and everybody, just the kind of the clog along the offensive line with 2 players that were selected in the top 60 in back-to-back years.
Yeah, definitely. The Packers have, I think, put themselves in a really good spot to have a good offensive line this year, while it's also an evaluation year. So they gave Aaron Banks a bunch of money. I'm gonna shelf that for a second.
Right.
Not exactly happy about that. But you have 2 kind of mid to late round players that have emerged as starters for them in contract years. Rasheed Walker at left tackle and Sean Ryan at right guard. Rasheed Walker's been great as a pass protector, abysmal as a run blocker, and this team does want to run the football. So I think they have hesitations with giving him a bunch of money when he's kind of a one-way player. And then Sean Ryan, it's kind of like, all right, first year as a starter last year, he ended up beating out their first round pick in Jordan Morgan for that right guard spot last year. So he's in evaluation mode as well in terms of, do they want to give him a contract extension? They took care of Zach Tom. That was always going to happen with him at right tackle. Elton Jenkins is going to slide into center for the foreseeable long-term future there. So they've basically positioned themselves now with those 2 rookie, last year of their rookie deal players as the starters. They feel good about where they're at. They give Aaron Banks the money. He's going to start at left guard, but they give him a contract that theoretically they can release him after a year. I'll get into it for a second. Just really, really stupid contract.
We got him.
I mean, just an absurd amount of money for a guy that is a replacement level starting guard, the type of guard that the Packers have. I mean, I'm sure you felt frustrations as a Vikings fan. Like, has there ever been a year where the Packers don't find an answer at guard? Like, they always find these 5th, 6th round dudes, plug them in, and they are the Aaron Bankses of the world. Like, that is what they do. So for them to just really, when they didn't even have a need, to just jump out in free agency and be like, $19 million a year for Aaron Banks, was like, what? Like, that was the last place I thought they would go with their money. But basically, if they want to keep him, they have to, either deal with his $22 million cap hit next year, or push that, as guaranteed cap hits into future seasons, which is probably what they would do. Or they cut him, which is the most likely scenario, and they take a $12.5 million dead cap. Like, that's, Packers fans are like, oh, it's just a 1-year deal with a bunch of fake money. No, that's a starting, like, good outside corner or a number 2 edge rusher if Lucas Van Ness doesn't work out or whatever. Like, that's a legit starter in free agency that you could use that money on. So just a wild contract. And that's flexible, right? They could keep him, they could cut him. And then, in practice, they're going to evaluate Belton and Morgan, who are in there as backups right now. A lot of potential with those guys, and either one could be a guard or a tackle. So they're just going to kind of let this play out. If Walker gets better as a run blocker, they'll extend him. If Ryan continues to get better and looks like a stud at right guard, they'll extend him. If both these investments look phenomenal in practice, they might even get some playing time this year, and then they'll go forward with those guys and get some comp picks in free agency. So they're very flexible, they're very deep, and have a lot of talent on that O-line. It's a good problem to have, but there's definitely some sorting out to do.
Okay, so then we're entering year 2 with Jordan Morgan. Do you worry at all? I know you just explained, like, hey, it is a good problem to have, but do you worry at all that wasted is a strong word, but do you worry at all that Jordan Morgan may not work out entering year 2 based on everything that was just explained?
There's definitely some worry. I think the panic meter is probably higher in Packerland on him than it is for me. He had a big loss against Lucas Van Ness in there. Like,
I did see that a couple days ago. Yep.
Yeah. And, the fact that he's not starting paired with that, I think there's a little bit more panic on him than there should be. I mean, I don't know if you were going to ask me about Lucas Van Ness or not, but like, I think he's got a lot of potential as a power rusher this year. He looked a lot better as the season went on, and he's a bad matchup for a Jordan Morgan. Like, when he goes at the end of the first round, the question on him is arm length and dealing with those lengthy bull rushers. So I'm certainly not panicking against one bull rush loss against Lucas Van Ness when we know Lucas Van Ness has shown incredible flashes in that area. So that's kind of not a concern for me. And the fact that he's not starting isn't really a concern either, because they have good players ahead of him. He dealt with a pretty bad shoulder injury last year that he had to shut it down for the year. So he's got to stay healthy. I think that's the biggest thing. I have a lot of faith in this team's ability to develop offensive linemen. So, I'm not necessarily worried. It's more like, do they end up just liking these other guys a lot? Sure. And then he's kind of just an afterthought. I never thought he had like superstar potential or anything like that either, but I guess that's where I'm at with him.
Okay, so you mentioned LVN 2023.
Sorry, I should say, when he did play last year, he wasn't horrible. He was just fine. So,
serviceable starter as a rookie, which is promising moving forward. At least it's not promising, but it's at least not extremely worrisome. Now, you mentioned LVN, and we're going to get to the Packers defense. So this Packers defense last year was very weird, but it was very good. And it was, top 10 in a lot of metrics in DVOA and EPA. But do you worry at all about the Packers defense with a lack of true number one, top tier pass rusher entering the 2025 season?
I think worry is kind of like relative. Like, if I want this team to win the Super Bowl,
sure.
Yeah. Like, I think a lot of guys have to take steps up this year. If this team wants to be a really good team and win double-digit games and get to the playoffs again. I certainly think they have the coaching and the pieces to be good again. But yeah, the biggest X factor for this defense has to be that defensive line. Rashawn Gary's got to get back to what he was the 3 years before last year. Kenny Clark has to get back to what he was the 3 years before last year. They have the dudes that have done it. Clark is 29, Rashawn Gary's 27. It just wasn't there last year, whether it was the scheme. Kenny Clark said he was dealing with a foot injury that he did suffer in that Brazil turf week 1. That's kind of believable when you look at his production the 3 years before that he can get back to being a top 10 defensive tackle in the league. But they got to go out and do it. And then Lucas Van Ness was always going to be a project. There was no doubt about that. Him coming out of Iowa, not being a full-time starter out of that program, not being a year 1 starter for the Packers behind Preston Smith. But did show those flashes as the season went on. I think he was 15th in pass rush win rate in the second half of the year, or maybe even better than that. But he was, always going to be a project. So this is a big year 3 for him. If he can take that leap up and be what a young Rashawn Gary was, which was always kind of the pro comp on him, this D-line could be awesome. And this could actually be a unit that was top 10 by a lot of standards last year. This could be a top 5 or 6 defense this year for sure. If they continue to struggle last year, you're putting a lot of pressure on a poor secondary, and that would be more of a concern against playoff caliber teams for sure.
That perfectly segues into my next question, which is regarding the secondary and obviously, the receivers in the division. So how much of a concern is it heading into the year with the outside corner play, knowing that, in order to get to the playoffs, the division teams that you're going to have to play?
Yeah, they kind of play that top-down zone approach, kind of like the Rams and some of these other defenses. They're a little bit different stylistically in how they do it, but they play a lot of cover 2, for example. But they definitely are of the mindset of as long as we're impacting the quarterback with our front, that's how we're going to get stops on third down. It's not going to be, the quarterback's trying to, get the ball to their number 1 wide receiver against man coverage, and we're locking that dude down and, forcing him to hold the ball. It's we're going to either impact them or they're going to get a completion on us and move the sticks. It's, kind of a polarizing way to live, I suppose. But I guess with that mentality, it just does put a lot of pressure on the front. They're not going to have any lockdown guys in the back end from a coverage perspective. They want guys that all play the run, which all 3 of their starting corners right now do. So they want to force third downs, where Hafley was brilliant designing blitzes last year. Frankly, he stole a lot of stuff from Brian Flores, I think, but it worked. They're just kind of having that conservative approach on the back end for sure. And then hopefully get a few extra picks from Xavier McKinney being a ball hawk on the back end too.
Very fair. 8 interceptions last year that was an unreal year, because it started out, it was 6 interceptions in 7 games. And it was this is an A++ signing. And then I was kind of surprised that they signed McKinney and Jacobs last year, and then they went out and spent 19 and a quarter on Aaron Banks. But anyway, it was just because it was, they were so good signings and they were young players that they could develop. Anyway, I'm not going to get back into the Aaron Banks, but I do want to talk about the line. I want to talk about the linebacking core. How do we feel about the linebacking core outside of a player that's a future superstar in Edge Cooper?
Oh yeah. Edge was unbelievable. It's hard for rookie linebackers to make, the impact that Edgerrin Cooper had in just a half a season, basically, of reps last year. He played about 550 snaps or so. Quay would be the question mark there. He's former first round pick, horrible, use of a first round pick by Brian Gutekunst, in my opinion. But he's, the bill on him was always okay, this is a linebacker position that if guys are playing and, the team is showing faith in a guy, typically they are going to show development over time. I think Quay Walker is slowly but surely settling into being a solid linebacker. The speed of the game has, he's processing things a little bit faster. I think you're seeing more and more coverage IQ. He drops every single interception opportunity that he's ever had, I think, which is frustrating. But if Quay can just be the 40th best linebacker in the league, like an average LB2, and someone that now has a second year of understanding with this defense, 4 years in the league, like be the guy that gets everybody lined up and kind of has a, force multiplying effect, if you will, on the run defense, because he does kind of have that field general mentality. That's nice. And then you have Edge, who's just flying around making plays. I mean, there's a lot of excitement for that duo, because I think Edgerrin Cooper can be a top 10 linebacker this year, quite easily, frankly. So that's and the play styles there are very nice, complementary skill sets, with Quay being a little more conservative, Cooper being more the go-getter playmaker type. So that could be an area too that kind of helps the coverage and helps elevate the defense a little bit. They were good at linebacker last year, surprisingly so. We had this conversation last year, and it was a weakness on paper for this team. I think it's a solid group that could be a legitimate strength this year.
I'm with you, by the way, on Edge. He's, to me, because he's a guy that plays with his hair on fire. He's so fun to watch. And whenever you guys were playing us in week 17 last year, there were a couple plays where I was just like, this is not going to be fun to play against for the next probably several years if he stays healthy, because he was so good. But I do have a couple rapid fire to end. We have rapid fire with every guest. Although I will add, with the Viking Packer fandom, do you want 2 extra friendly ball busting questions at some point mixed within here? You do?
Let's hear it.
Okay, we'll mix them in. Anyway, we'll start. Jordan Love over under passing touchdowns 26.5.
I'm definitely going over. Matt LaFleur loves to pump those numbers up down in the red zone. Always has. Goes back to when he had Aaron Rodgers too.
Okay, Josh Jacobs rushing yards over under 1,100.
Ooh, that's a big number. What did he have last year?
13.
I mean, if he stays healthy, he'll definitely go over, but I don't think he missed any time last year. That's statistically improbable that happens again.
That's unfortunately the reality of the NFL. But
yeah, man, that's a tough one. I can't sit here as someone that has told everybody to draft Josh Jacobs in fantasy and say under. So I'm going to have to say over, but that's a big number. There's only a handful of running backs that do that every year, but he's certainly good enough to do that.
Last year was a good year. The running backs are back. I mean, with the too high safety and then everything, with all the years that Saquon, Henry, and Gibbs had. And anyway, Matthew Golden over under 900 yards as a rookie.
I like that you cranked it up, because on Underdog it's like 680 or 750 yards, which is way too low. I make
my own numbers. I'm going off the cuff.
Yeah,
I'm going whatever I think, whatever I think is fair.
God, you're making me sound like such a homer, but you're hitting me in the spots that I would take the hires on. So you said 900 flat? 900
on the dot.
I think he gets 980 to 1,000. So gotta go over.
All right, now over under 1.5 division wins. Do we improve in the division win area?
Come on, do I need to bring the broom out again? They will at least get 2 in the division. They will at least get 2. Absolutely. I think the Lions are going to be a little worse than they were last year. The Vikings will be tough, but they always play the Bears pretty tough. They'll at least get 2. I think they'll definitely get 1 against the Bears, and then they'll either sweep the Bears or at least get 1 against Detroit or Minnesota, at least.
We'll see. We're 3-1 against Jordan Love lifetime. Anyway,
I think the more realistic number there would be 2.5.
Okay. Well, I mean, look, the only game we lost against Jordan Love was when Jaron Hall started. So that's anyway. The Packers leading sack getter over under 9.5 sacks.
I think I'll go under on that one. Rashawn Gary's never been a great finisher.
Right.
I think they could have 5 guys that get 6 sacks, but I would go under on that one.
All right, now this is the other ball-breaking question here. Do you think Matt LaFleur needs to work on his his anger a little bit on the sidelines whenever he gets animated?
No. Passion is good, man.
Dude, I'm a yeller at the TV. I get it. I get it. And then final question is his team wins total over under 9.5?
The schedule's not easy. I've said, because I get that question a lot. People know I'm a Packers fan. I see people out in public. I think you put a gun to my head, I'd say they're a 10-win team this year.
Okay.
I think the floor is pretty dang good. Yeah, I think I got to go higher on it. I do. I hate to be that guest that just takes all the hires, but
No, I mean, look, I would do it too. I would do it too.
Yeah.
I mean, JJ.
And they
bro,
won
I'm all
11
in with
last
JJ,
year.
so, yeah.
Yeah, they won 11 last year, and a lot went wrong for this team. It really did. The quarterback injury and their wide receiver group was just not what I think it's going to be this year. So,
all right, well, Marcus, I appreciate you joining for the Packers preview, second year in a row. So let everybody know where they can find your work.
Yeah, so it's That Franchise Guy on YouTube. We're doing kind of deep dives throughout the summer. So I've got the Packers one up there as well, as along with 20 other teams. We've got the number 9 team, or the number 10 team is coming out here on this Thursday. But about 2-hour breakdowns on every team. So if you're thirsty for some NFL content, go check it out.
All right, well, Marcus, I appreciate you joining, and best of luck in 15 games this year.
Back at you.
That wraps up the 2025 Packers team preview. I hope you guys enjoyed, and a big thank you to Marcus Whitman for joining the Packers team preview. And if you did enjoy, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as I cannot thank you guys enough for the support. And until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.